started. Our next speaker is Callie Stanley. Callie is a postdoc at Georgetown University, and she is working on the migration ecology of yellow-billed cuckoos. Callie received her master's from York University and her PhD from the University of Maryland, where she worked on patterns of migratory connectivity and the non-breeding ecology of wood thrush. Callie, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to share the two road to recovery projects that I'm currently working on, or that we're working on. So the yellow-billed cuckoo is a declining long-distance migratory land bird. They breed in large areas of North America, which is shown here in red on this eBird relative abundance map. Both eBird data and satellite transmitters suggest that the Gran Chaco is the main wintering area for yellow-billed cuckoos across the range. And satellite tracking has also revealed key staging areas for individuals across the range in northern South America, as well as in Mexico for Western populations. Across the range, yellow-billed cuckoos have been declining, but the decline has been particularly severe in the West, where the bird has been extirpated from the majority of its historic range, which is shown here in light green. In 2014, the Western distinct population segment was listed as federally threatened. And now in the US, it's mainly restricted to these areas in blue. And then it is also restricted to found in northern Mexico during the breeding season. Within the Road to Recovery framework, yellow-billed cuckoos are solidly in phase 1 in both the biological science and social science knowledge. However, with regards to the state of the knowledge of the species biology, we are much further ahead in our assessment of what we know compared with what we know about the social science. Thinking about the biological knowledge and the state of that knowledge, we do have really good information about migratory connectivity and linked population from tracking data from both Eastern and Western populations. In terms of our knowledge about the ecology of cuckoos on the breeding grounds, the Western designated population segment has definitely been better studied compared to the East. And this is largely because it is a listed species. The Western DPS is largely restricted to riparian habitat, and there is very good information about critical breeding habitat for Western populations, as well as their major threats, which include loss of riparian habitat or degradation of riparian habitat due to changes in hydrological processes or even just maturation of riparian zones. However, demographic data is much more sparse in the West and is really confined to only a handful of studies. By contrast, Eastern populations have been studied far less. However, they are picked up by a number of large-scale monitoring projects, so we do have demographic data available for much of the Eastern range. On the non-breeding ground, far less is known about cuckoos, although they have been studied at a key staging area in Colombia. On their wintering region in the Gran Chaco, habitat loss is thought to be a major threat. But in general, information about the non-breeding season is a major black box for cuckoos. In the West, there is an active working group that has been around since 2008, the Western Yellow-billed Cuckoo Working Group. However, we don't currently have a formal working group for the East. With regards to what we know about the social science knowledge for cuckoos, on the breeding ground, the Western DPS is much more advanced compared to the Eastern populations. And in particular, this is because the US Fish and Wildlife Service is in the process of a species status assessment right now, which will be used to eventually develop a recovery plan. And so partners and affected parties are currently being identified, and this work has not happened in the East yet. On the non-breeding grounds, we have identified partners in the Gran Chaco, both academic partners and NGOs, to begin working in that region. And so identifying additional partners and determining affected parties is just in the initial phases. To fill in the knowledge gaps needed to advance cuckoo recovery, we currently have two major road to recovery projects. The first focused on developing a range-wide population model, and we've been working on this for a couple of years now. And then the second, which we are just starting this fall, we'll be working on the non-breeding grounds of cuckoos in the Gran Chaco. For the first project, we have already established linked populations by developing a migratory connectivity map. And we've done this by deploying satellite tags across 8 breeding populations throughout the range. And for all breeding populations, we've seen that the Gran Chaco ecoregion in South America is really the predominant wintering range for all birds, all cuckoos. And this has really been helpful in narrowing down the wintering range for cuckoos, which in this map you can see as almost a much larger portion of South America. The second objective we are currently working on is using mortality data from the satellite tags to estimate regional variation in seasonal survival. And for the final objective, we will combine information on migratory connectivity with data from existing range-wide monitoring programs such as MAPS and Breeding Bird Survey to develop a range-wide population model. The satellite data has been really crucial in identifying the Gran Chaco, which is just zoomed in here as the major wintering area. And so for our second Road to Recovery project, we are really focused on filling in the gaps in our knowledge about the non-breeding ecology of cuckoos in that ecoregion, and really just understanding basic information about their ecology down there. And equally important, our second objective of this project is focused on working with BirdLife International and their local affiliates, Gira Paraguay and Aves Argentinas, to begin developing the social science knowledge needed for the advancements of the recovery process. And here are a couple of our partners in that project. So how have we used the Road to Recovery framework in these projects? Both projects were really designed following the Road to Recovery model, and in particular, the first project, which was more focused on advancing the biological science, we really used that original Road to Recovery pyramid to structure the project. However, so far, the largest impact of the Road to Recovery framework has really been the push to include an understanding of the human dimensions of the recovery process, and using the Road to Recovery model to guide us on how best to integrate both the biological and social sciences towards advancing recovery of the species. And just to wrap up, I wanted to mention all of our wonderful partners on the two projects, Road to Recovery projects we have, both in the US and in Paraguay and Argentina, and then of the wonderful funding sources for these two projects. And that is it for me.